This video is going to be a preview of the Lions-Rams wildcard matchup Sunday evening in Detroit. I'm going to choose to focus this one on the Lions defense and whether they can stop or slow down Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, and the Rams offensive system. Let me be specific about what I'm referring to when I say offensive system. I mean the Sean McVay's under center run game and play action concepts. I think that that's the first element, the jab, if you will, that the Lions have got to figure out a way to stop or slow down and force Stafford and the Rams into those what is now more traditional shotgun spread formations where the receivers are lined up in a more typical fashion. What I mean when I say typical fashion is that the Rams utilize compressed formations so much that I think they're actually playing a totally different game than the rest of the NFL in terms of their count in the run game. I don't mean on-field count pre-snap. I mean what the coaches are looking for in determining whether to call a run play or a pass play before each snap. Now, as it relates to the Lions, they have a very clear strength and weakness that's obvious in their defense. Their ability to stop the run is their strength. They're second in the NFL in rush yards allowed, only giving up 1,509 rushing yards in 17 games. That's a third lowest in yards per carry this year, 3.7 allowed. Also the third lowest in terms of number of rushing first downs allowed. And in the last 4 weeks, you've got this very clear dynamic of giving up a lot of passing yards while shutting down the run game. Here's their rushing yards allowed in the last 4 weeks: 83, 17, 61 by the Cowboys, and then 89 last week in the rematch against the Vikings. Those last 4 games, the Lions are giving up 62.5 yards per game rushing. Conversely, on the other end, why am I choosing to focus on the under center run game? Because the Rams have 2,445 rushing yards this year. That's 11th in the NFL, or 120 rushing yards per game. It is a fundamental or foundational element to their offense, if you ask me. Something's got to give in this matchup. 62 yards allowed, rushing yards allowed per game in the last 4 games versus the Rams averaging 120 on the ground throughout the season. That's too big a disparity. Something's got to give. If the Rams get to 130, 135, they win this game, absent turnovers, in my opinion, because their offense is established and they can utilize all of the complementary plays off of their run concepts to really create a ton of conflict in Lions defenders, particularly at the second and third level. Do it the other way. If the Lions hold the Rams to 60, 70, maybe even 85 rushing yards on the day, and if they get to 85, presumably that's on 20, 22 carries, something like that, then the Lions are in great position to withstand the barrage in the air, maybe get 1 or 2 interceptions themselves. That's my point. If you give McVay and Stafford the choice to run or pass on any given 1st and 10 or 2nd and 4, presumably after a 6-yard gain on first down, then it puts the Lions in a lot of difficulty because their players are in run-pass conflict more often, and the more conflict that McVay can create, either directional conflict, run-pass conflict, or vertical conflict in your players, the better it is for Stafford and the offensive line in the run game to get things going. Look, Stafford can make all the throws. Okay, so I'm not ignoring or ignorant of the fact that he can drop back in the shotgun and throw the football. He's got a huge arm. He's made a lot of plays throughout his career, a lot of them in Detroit, obviously. And the Lions have a very clear weakness in terms of giving up a lot of passing yards, particularly to star wide receivers in the last 3 weeks. Having said that, I do think that removing that choice for McVay has to be one of the first things that Aaron Glenn and the defense does, meaning show him that if you run the ball on 1st and 10, we're going to create a bunch of 2nd and 8s, maybe 2nd and 7. Once you get to 2nd and 6, McVay and the Rams are on schedule, if you will, and that run-pass conflict persists on that series of downs. Lions have given up the 4th most passing yards in the NFL, 4,600. They've given up over 1,100 passing yards just in the last 3 weeks. A lot of it, obviously, to Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. However, They do have 16 interceptions. They're 3-1 in those last 4 games when they've given up a ton of passing yards. They've also forced 9 turnovers, a number of them being interceptions. If the Lions can come out and slow down or stop the Rams' run game repeatedly, it puts Stafford in less advantageous positions because they're known passing downs. This preview is going to focus on the Rams' under center offensive system, like I explained before. Let me preface that a little bit. Of course, the Ravens and Rams played a great game in Week 14 in Baltimore. Prior to that game, I did a preview where I showed a lot of 11 personnel under center concepts. And from my numbers that I had, granted, I only had 5 games worth of film. And in some of those cases, I didn't have fourth quarter film, or in one case, I didn't have any second half film at all. I had the Rams at 71% run and 29% pass when they were under center. And those numbers stayed true when they played the Ravens in Baltimore. First half of that game had the Rams at 19 runs and 3 passes when they were under center. For the game, those numbers balanced out a little bit. It ended up being 28 runs and 9 passes when the Rams were under center. You're still talking about a little over 66% or 2/3 run plays versus 1/3 pass plays. When the Rams are under center, compressed formations, you can look for a run concept or a play action concept reliably. Do it the other way. Shotgun, typical shotgun formations. In that Ravens game, for the entire 60 minutes of the game, Matt Stafford was in the shotgun 34 times. 32 of them were pass plays. You have this real distinct difference between the run-pass tendency, whether Stafford is under center or in the shotgun. It's my opinion that they play a different game than the NFL when they're under center in these compressed formations. And throughout the course of this video, that's generally what I'm going to focus on. 3rd and 4, 3rd and 8, those are known situations where I think the Lions have a better opportunity to either A, get to the quarterback, B, create some chaos or some havoc with some of the blitzes they've been utilizing more often, or C, possibly turn Matt Stafford over by getting an interception. I'm not saying it's like that's the most likely thing to occur, but if the Lions can remove Sean McVay's ability to choose run pass on any 1st, 2nd, or 3rd down, I think it puts the Lions defense in a much more advantageous position to get a lead on Sunday night and possibly get their first playoff win in a long time. The first set of plays that I've chosen here to try to illustrate my point about Sean McVay and the Rams offense making as many play concepts look the same as they possibly can. So you got this return motion by Puka Nacua, and I actually made this cut up prior to the Ravens game against the Rams, I think in Week 14. So you'll see a lot of film against Arizona. This return motion is defined by Nacua going in motion in one direction and then reversing course back into the original side where he lined up, and then inserting into the C gap, oftentimes to go block a strong safety or nickel defender that's there, because it's 11 personnel. Now, when they do this to the boundary, theoretically, you should get this away from the nickel defender. Like you can see here, the ball is on the right hash. Nickel defender, in most cases, would be to the field. These compressed formations offer a lot of opportunity for the Rams to run the ball into the boundary. Additionally, that sets up play action passes. In this case, a little wide delay to the tight end down into the flats. Again, away from the nickel defender. So they're playing a different game than most other people in the NFL from the standpoint of the compressed formations, from the standpoint of making as many plays as possible, as many different concepts as possible look exactly the same for the longest amount of time that they can, so the defense is frozen, if you will, or choosing wrong. Conceptually, there's 2 comparisons I'll make here, and a lot of people are not going to like them, particularly if they're Rams fans. Conceptually, it's just an option phase, is all it is, where the handoff to the running back is one play concept, the dive. The boot off of it is essentially like waggle from the wing T. So you've created directional conflict in the defense. And then as much eye candy as possible in terms of motion and utilizing those tightly aligned receivers as blockers at the point of attack, or in this case, with Puka Nacua not going in return motion on that particular play. He's actually motioning from the top side of the field, but it's the same as if he lined up here, motioned that way, and then brought back to insert into the C gap. It's the same exact finishing product. It's just he's starting from one side of the field. So McVay can make it look different on any particular week or any particular formation. I offer to you that if the Lions are frozen by these motions and all of the different play possibilities, that works out in the Rams' favor. By forcing the defense to hesitate, it allows comboing or zone blocking offensive linemen more time to get up into the face of second-level defenders, give them something to deal with, and then utilizing that third receiver to go block a nickel defender or a DB as a fourth down against Arizona. Hopefully I was able to provide you guys some type of baseline in terms of what they're doing conceptually, not the plays, but trying to make as many play concepts as possible look the same so that the defense and the defensive coordinator, in fact, sits back and reacts instead of attacking. And I don't think that's what Aaron Glenn's going to do. One of the dynamics I want to focus on is the Rams' use of compressed formations, having wide receivers aligned tightly to the formation. In my opinion, they are setting traps for these outside linebackers, edge defenders, in terms of who they're normally faced with as a potential blocker. Normally it's a tight end, an offensive tackle, and what the Rams and Sean McVay do often on nearly every play is give you at least one compressed side of a formation. I offer to you that when you get a tightly aligned wide receiver like this and your edge defender is in the vicinity to get hands on that player, you should do so. Because free releases, if you ask me, against this Rams team is death. And what I mean by that is allowing the receivers, tight ends to get free releases against the pass, like you see here. Puka Nacua with an easy catch underneath of zone defense, week 17 against the Giants. But free releases in the run game as well, because McVay is lining those guys up there to be used in the run blocking scheme. Now, you'll say, well, they can't block an edge defender one-on-one. No, they're oftentimes used to chip, to help out, or insert, like you saw during the first selection of plays I showed you. I offer to you that when you get the opportunity here to get hands on a receiver like a Cooper Kupp, like a Puka Nacua, Demarcus Robinson will typically be lined up a little wider than those guys. He's an X-receiver. So is Atwell, in my opinion, in this system. You should take that opportunity. Look at it like a body shot, not like each individual play has to be won or lost necessarily, but a body shot, an opportunity to put hands on and be physical with these guys so that over the course of the game, you wear down some of the players that McVay is putting at risk. And when I say at risk, I don't mean physical risk from a health standpoint. I mean he's putting them in a location so that a bigger, stronger, faster athlete can make contact with them 6 or 8 times in a game, where in a, quote, normal NFL offense, they would only be able to make contact with that player maybe once or twice a game at most, because those receivers will be lined up wider. There'll be more space between the outside linebackers. Now, take a look at the difference in Jihad Ward versus Kayvon Thibodeau. Now, Kayvon Thibodeau is not necessarily lined up in the same manner to the weak side away from the tight end as Jihad Ward is, but my point is using this play to show you the type of contact that can be made when these receivers are lined up so tight to the formation that they put themselves at risk of physical contact that maybe isn't, I would call that a double, in terms of imposing your will on someone. You're not going to hit a whole bunch of home runs against these receivers, but if you ask me, causing them to go further in their bag of their stamina and cardio is what you want to try to accomplish with your outside linebackers, edge defenders. I'm super interested in the strategy that Aaron Glenn deploys from a play-by-play basis. They're going to have to be multiple. They're going to have to show different looks. You can't give McVay the same look every time. That's infallible unless you're, Belichick and Flores in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, which I will show a screenshot of some of the things they did. I don't have the all 22 at this point. Another opportunity here for an edge defender to get hands-on. This is Nakua. And Jihad Ward runs right by him. Normally, edge defenders in the NFL are looking to rush the passer. They're looking to get upfield, and they're coached to do that. And a lot of their drills reflect that. McVay reverses the question, if you ask me, and forces your edge defenders to deal with something, or actually, from a Lions perspective, let's say gives them an opportunity to deal with something they don't normally get to deal with. If you created a drill at any level of football and you took a wide receiver and asked them to block an edge defender, pass pro, run, concept, whatever, to or from them, it would be laughable. McVay doesn't necessarily do that, but he uses those guys in the area, in the vicinity of the edge defenders, such that they widen their alignment up because they're told to. I think that McVay and the Rams take advantage of the things that NFL edge defenders and outside linebackers are normally taught on a weekly basis and even in training camp. I think it'll be Aaron Glenn and those guys' job to look for opportunities to land a couple of body shots, if you will, on those receivers, or a single and a double, if you like the baseball analogy, so that as the game progresses, those receivers have had to work harder in the run game or even getting out into their route and are less effective when they're able to get downfield as a potential option for Matthew Stafford. On some level, I think I have to explain or show some examples of the Rams wide receivers blocking well at the point of attack or maybe away from the point of attack. If I'm going to claim to you that being physical with them, with outside linebackers or nickel safeties like Brian Branch and Ifeatu Melifonwu, should be one of the strategical options that Aaron Glenn has. If I'm going to do that, I think I have to give you examples of how the wide receivers are used in the blocking game. Some people say, well, wide receivers can't block in the NFL. Well, they do it, number one, because of what they're asked to do, the angles that are created for them. They're not asked to base block Myles Garrett. They're not asked to reach block Myles Garrett. They're given favorable angles and situations by their coach, created by the formation, which is their alignment, and then taught how to do it. And it's practiced and repped, and they do it in live speed. This is Cooper Kupp blocking Myles Garrett, and that sounds hyperbolic, but this is the easiest one to understand because it's alignment. You even see Cooper Kupp adjust his alignment once Myles Garrett finally gets down in his stance. Garrett's one of those guys that gets down in his stance late. I believe he's looking at certain things pre-snap, and then Cooper Kupp adjusts just enough to where he can execute this pin down block on him so that the left tackle can pull outside. I think this is the easiest one to understand. It's a pin pull concept against the Browns, who's one of the better defenses in the NFL. And they're able to get the edge. Additionally, out on the outside, I think it's Demarcus Robinson is pinning down on the nickel defender. And who are they making tackle? The boundary side corner, or this corner to the point of attack. Let's put it that way. It's actually not the boundary in this instance. Same concept later on in the game. And 54 actually knows this is coming. And it's Kupp again. This one's to the field. Pin pull, because you're pinning down on the edge defender and pulling the right tackle. Again, 15 is going to get the nickel defender. There is a corner who is, quote, unblocked initially. But you can see the right tackle is pulling to get outside and go lead up on that unblocked player. Browns are quite lucky or fortunate, if you ask me, that this one didn't end up being a bigger gain. That's one of the ways that they utilize the wide receivers in the blocking game, creating favorable angles, creating situations that they can execute against the caliber of athlete that you see out there at strong safety, nickel, or edge defender in the NFL. One of the things they want to do and one of they want to install in your players' brains is reacting to this Jill ISO block. So pay attention to the downside of the screen where the tight end and Puka Nacua are. I will give you the end zone angle, and then I'm going to come back to this all-22 view. Jill ISO is where the tight end blocks out on an edge defender, and the wide receiver, Z, wing, tight, whatever you want to call him, whatever he is, situationally, I'm sorry, whatever he is listed as on the roster, inserts into that space between the tight end and the left tackle and goes to block the front side inside linebacker. In some cases, it's the front side nickel defender because, again, they're in 11 personnel the whole time. I'll let you see the end zone angle, and then I'll go back to the All-22 to talk about McVay installing your reactions. So we're talking about these two guys here and what they're doing at the point of attack. You can see Marlon Humphrey is already reacting to that block. He's the unblocked corner. McVay wants your corner to be unblocked. Think about it. They want to block your inside linebackers, in this case Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith. Both have players that have worked up to them. In the case of Queen, it's Nakua on this Jill ISO. In the case of Smith, it's an offensive lineman who's comboed up to him. Oh, by the way, this is a 5-yard gain. First play of the game. So when I say they want to establish or install reactions in your players, I'm using that intentionally. I'll show you a play here in a moment. That is a very clear illustration of the complementary nature of so many of the plays that McVay and the Rams run. On defense, you got reads. So if you're reading the tight end wing combo and you see this and you attack as Marlon Humphrey, you would think that's a good thing. You're involved in the run game, and it is a good thing. Marlon Humphrey's a fantastic football player. He's got great instincts, and I think he's a great student of the game because he's trained well. However, what McVay wants to do is create indecision in all things for your defenders. So when you get that Jill ISO later on in the game, it ends up not being a run play. It looks like it from all facets, but the tight end delays and releases out. So you say, well, what do you do about it, Coach? Well, I do think there is something to be said about chasing sacks less when the Rams are under center, because under center is a run-oriented, play-action-oriented system. You're talking about not one system, but multiple here. Under center system is run-oriented from a tendency standpoint. And again, I tracked run-pass data leading up to the Ravens game. Under center run-pass ratio, I think it was 74-26, something like that. 71-29, excuse me. Now again, that was limited to 5 games data that I had prior to that Week 14 matchup. In the Ravens game, in the first half, I believe the run-pass ratio on under center formations, like you see here, was 18 runs and 3 passes. Maybe it was 19 and 3. For the game, the Rams ended up being 28 runs, 9 passes out of under center stuff. So what they're doing is, again, installing reactions in your players. Think about the first play I showed you. Puka Nacua was here. Tight end stepped out. Puka Nacua inserted inside. I call it Jill ISO to go block Patrick Queen. In this case, Nacua is motioning across the field. You've got the tight end blocking the edge defender. Nacua in the same exact, very similar position, I should say, to that Jill ISO concept, and the tight end delay releases out into the flat. The edge defender goes to get the quarterback to chase the sack, and the tight end is wide open to the boundary. The nickel defender is on the other field. This is just math. That's all this is. Just math. It's series-based football. On some level, you do need the edge defenders to be a little bit delayed in trying to get to the quarterback when it's under center. When they're in the shotgun, typical shotgun, not pistol, it's a totally different system. It's a totally different run-pass ratio, thereby requires totally different reactions. Hopefully, I'm probably not doing a great job of illustrating the conflict. Well, maybe I'm doing a good job of illustrating the conflict that McVay and the Rams are going to put in the Lions defenders, install in their brains. But there's multiple systems at play here. And on a play-by-play basis, you've got to be able to adjust to, okay, it's under center compressed formation on 1st and 10. I know what I've got conceptually. I've got run. I've got play, action, pass. It makes sense. You're under center. Wider alignments by the wide receivers necessitates a different style of play. Shotgun is totally different in and of itself. Hopefully I said all those things in a way that makes sense. All right, I think probably the best illustration of wide receiver blocking is this play right here, because they're actually getting to the boundary side corner, but not with a pin pull offensive tackle. It's Cooper Kupp. So is there a tendency in terms of Cooper Kupp being used at the point of attack? Maybe. I can't tell you that. Do I suspect that I see it? Yes, I do. But Puka Nacua is used as an excellent blocker at the point of attack as well. So I think that's a little simplistic. Kupp and the right tackle are going to combo this edge defender, and then Kupp is going to work up to the boundary side corner such that they can go get him and create this space for this outside zone run play to Kyron Williams. Conceptually, it's just a pin down. It's just a pin down by Kupp, the same as he did on Myles Garrett in the first play I showed you, while the X wide receiver does the same exact thing he did on those two pin pull concepts I showed you against the Browns. He goes to get the boundary side safety or nickel defender. Leaving the corner unblocked for a moment, Kupp goes out to get him, ends up being an 8-yard gain. Simple. Great concept, timeless, if you ask me. When I say that it's series-based football, I'm very intentional about that phrase. That's normally been something that I have heard used to describe the wing T, and I would say that's an apt comparison here. When they're under center, I would compare this to a wing T offense because it's a system of order. Now, it's a zone blocking scheme. It's not down kick or gap schemes, if you will, like the wing T is, but they can block anything. They will combo your defensive tackles, period, because that's what they do repeatedly. The Ravens, in this case, are giving them a favorable look. This kind of 2-3 techniques. Some people call it a split 40. If you're going to try various things, Sean McVay has seen pretty much all of it, and his players have been prepared for it. In this case, it's a run concept, reverse pivot by Stafford. Queen is going to go underneath of this front side block, and they're trying to fast flow this and switch it with Roquan Smith folding over the top. Just watch the offensive linemen for the Rams. They've seen all of this before. They've repped it in practice, probably from day one or training camp or even off-season installs, and they're prepared for it. You're going to have to defeat blocks, number one. Number two, if you give them this picture from here to here, this is going to happen, regardless of what you do from a defensive standpoint, unless you've got a defensive tackle that just can't be blocked, meaning he can't be comboed. But I don't think that the Lions have the type of defensive tackle talent that this combo here isn't going to happen and close off that player completely such that a running lane is created like the one you see here. If it sounds like bad news, I don't mean to be the bearer of that. I'm just presenting to you what they're able to execute against NFL-level defensive talent consistently. One more element that I have to cover here, because the motion is used on every single play, is jet motion. I only have Cooper Kupp with one running play so far this season, and Puka Nacua with 12. Presumably, all of those are on jet motion concepts. I don't know that to be true. I just looked at their rushing stats, and I understand that I've seen them probably 4 or 5 times total throughout the year. Against the Ravens, I believe the Rams ran jet motion and handed the ball off once, maybe twice. You can see the nature of it. You've got the running back going opposite to try to hold defenders inside. Jet sweep is going around the edge. It's very similar to the pin pull concept. You've got wide receiver Kupp again at the point of attack being used as a blocker. Comboing, he's taught to get to the outside shoulder of the edge defender so that this pulling tackle can then reach the edge defender. Kupp is working up to the nickel, in this case Kyle Hamilton. You're probably at this point already wondered, Coach, are you saying we should be in a one-high alignment the whole game? No, I'm not. I think you've got to be variable. I think you've got to present different looks. If you're going to read and react, your players have to play downhill, which sets them up for the play action, obviously. If you don't stop the run, that conflict persists for all 60 minutes. If you stop or at least slow down the run, there's less conflict created in your defender's eyes, in their brains, because you've already put them in a 2nd and 8. It sounds very simple to say you've got to stop the run on 1st down. You do. They can still get 1st downs from 2nd and long. This is actually a 2nd and 7, the jet sweep to Nacua here. You will see this motion consistently. How often it's handed off? 13 times so far this year, if you trust the numbers that I looked up, meaning 12 run plays for Puka Nacua in 2023 and 1 for Cooper Kupp. I'm not sure that Atwell or Demarcus Robinson are real big jet sweep guys. It doesn't seem like it to me. Don't see it handed off a lot, but you see that motion created pre-snap, sometimes late, just before the snap, to create as much conflict as possible from a directional standpoint, and some people call it eye candy, if you will. This is one of the foundational elements of what the Rams do in terms of how they block with their receivers and the motion that tries to create conflict in your defenders on every snap. So what are the Lions' options? From a simplistic standpoint, you can either read and react or attack. Again, we're focusing on the under-center offense for the Rams, which is a system in and of itself. But any system can be broken or interrupted such that you force the players and the coaches to make decisions that they're not accustomed to. How do they do that? Well, what they want to do is they want to delay or elongate Sean McVay's ability to make an adjustment. They want to make the adjustment period longer. In some ways, the Rams' offense kind of helps you in that regard because they do run the ball so much. They want to eat clock. It's not that Matt Stafford can't throw the football, but when they're under center, the offense is somewhat simplified in terms of the things that you'll have to stop. You're either talking about a direct run concept, a jet sweep, which is rare, as we talked about in the last segment, or a play action concept, which you can see is being set up here. This is film, obviously, from the 2021 Super Bowl. The Bengals defense, at a time of their choosing, attacked. This is middle of the field. It's a 1st and 10. I believe it's after a pass play for a 1st down. You can see that they're attacking with Jermaine Pratt and then one of the DBs they have on the field. You will be in your nickel defense 100% of the time. It's a one-high alignment because you have the nickel down into the boundary to twin. So McVay can manipulate where your nickel defender is. As such, I think he wants to control your ability to put that 8th defender in the box. You have to be willing to roll that corner up away from the nickel and trust him, whoever that player is, to make run-pass reads and react accordingly. Another example, it's a bunch formation. They use it more tray, at least in the film that I have. Tray is a slightly different alignment, formation, I should say, than bunch, but conceptually similar in that you have 3 players bunched up or lined up tightly next to each other on one side of the formation. Very similar look here for the Bengals as to what the Patriots played in the 2018 Super Bowl when they just dismantled the Rams' offense. I'm not saying it's this simple because if this is what you do all game, well, then McVay and Stafford are going to A, call more play action passes, or B, audible from under center to the shotgun or pistol and get into some play that gives them a more favorable advantage in terms of completing passes. So your defense has got to be aware of what the call is by Aaron Glenn pre-snap and then how you have to adjust defensively to whatever the formation is. The guy who I think can make plays everywhere and play a big role in this game, besides Derek Barnes, is Brian Branch. He can read and fit wherever he needs to as a quote inside linebacker. Now this is an 8-man front from their base defense, which you will not be in as a Lions fan. Prepare yourself. You won't be in your base defense at all in this game on Sunday night because the Rams are in 11 personnel. So you won't have 3 interior linemen, outside linebackers, 2 of them, and then 2 inside linebackers. And in fact, now the Lions have done the correct thing and they've switched these 2 guys and moved Barnes to outside linebacker and Campbell to inside linebacker. I'm very interested in who they play out there on the edge. I think Barnes provides more versatility in terms of dropping against the pass. As an aside, the Giants actually did try to play their base defense early against the Rams in Week 17, and it did not work out. They ended up switching to a 5-1. Glenn's job is going to be to get Branch to the point of attack as much as possible because he's the wild card in terms of the guy who can cover extremely well, anybody. He can take on blocks, get downhill and make tackles, as you see in this little clip here. He can also read and react, adjust, and get to the quarterback. I think he's got to be moved up closer to the line of scrimmage. And I don't know exactly where that alignment is on every snap because the Rams are going to be in different formations every play. And it's going to be tough to do because, as I alluded to a couple of plays ago, they will control where your nickel defender is unless you're a team like the Ravens that just lines up your nickel defender to the field regardless. So you can see there's two receivers over into the boundary pre-snap, and the Ravens already have their nickel to the field. That kind of tells you that it's not man by alignment. But in any case, I think one option is not focused on Brian Branch, but one option for Hutchinson or Barnes or whoever plays outside linebacker, edge defender in this game is this solid technique that Kyle Van Noy uses here. For a moment, act like this player isn't here, Arthur Millette. Additionally, you're going to get motion out of here back to the side where he came from by Cooper Kupp. If you can stop or slow down the run game with your interior six, you can still defend the pass from these under center formations and not put yourself at further risk. Again, act like Arthur Millette isn't here. On this solid technique by Kyle Van Noy, meaning he's almost head up on the tight end, and he kicks the tight end's ass off the snap. Remember the Jill ISO that I showed you earlier as a foundational play where the tight end blocks out and the wide receiver Nacua inserts inside to go get the frontside inside linebacker? Watch Nacua adjust to the way that the tight end is engaged by Van Noy. Nacua is going to Jill ISO. That's what he's doing. But Van Noy's lined up so tight, he has to react and go out to go get the nickel. I think that there is something to be said to the solid technique against a tight end or maybe even a 7 technique, but someone with a little bit more size. So a D tackle, a Kaminsky or a Pascal being lined up just inside of the tight end in a 7 technique. I don't think your interior players can be lined up super wide and stop the run against the Rams. They're too good at zone blocking. They're too good at manipulating and using wide receivers as that additional blocker to chip combo, work up to the second level. Rams have averaged 145 yards rushing per game in the last 7 games when they're 6-1. And in fact, they've won 7 of their last 8 games, with the only loss being to the Ravens on the road. Branch can do all of these things that I'm advocating for. This is one of the better nickel plays that you'll see throughout the course of the season. He's actually in the box and reading this. This is not a stunt. This is not a blitz. They are in their nickel alignment. 4 guys on the line of scrimmage, 2 inside linebackers, nickel defender here, 2 DBs to the left, 2 DBs to the right. I think with the personnel that the Lions have, this may be what you see more of in terms of that motion pulling Branch into the box as that 7th defender, very similar to what you saw on one of his tackles for loss against the Falcons, even though that was an 8-man front from the base defensive personnel look. There is one other element that I'd like to cover in this preview video, but I think what I'll do is push that off into a standalone video that'll be a shorter in duration, and that'll be to focus on the blitzes and stunts, and some of them run stunts, that Aaron Glenn has been using a lot in the last 3 or 4 weeks with Brian Branch, Ifeatu Melifonwu, and some of the other corners, DBs, that can create chaos, blitzing or attacking from unusual alignments, or unusual angles, I should say, to catch the offense off guard. This is my preview for the Lions defense, attempting to go out there and slow down or stop the Rams' under center offensive system. I'm not sure that they can get it done over the course of 60 minutes repeatedly with the same look. I think you've got to be multiple and present Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford with a shit ton of different looks, not to confuse them, but so that they're not reliably getting the same defensive front, the same coverage on every down. I don't think the Lions are good enough to just go out there and play the same front every play and stop the run and the pass when the Rams are under center. This offensive system is both fun to watch and kind of frustrating. I think McVay is taking advantage of NFL defenses and how they're normally faced with spread shotgun offensive systems where maybe you have some zone read involved. In my opinion, the compressed formations are a totally different game than what the rest of the NFL plays on a weekly basis. And it's Aaron Glenn and the defense's job to have already identified that and had a game plan in place whereby his players can adjust from snap to snap, depending on whether Stafford is in the shotgun or under center, and whether or not the formation is compressed or has a more spread out nature. Appreciate you guys' time. Let me know what you think of the preview and the plays that I selected to show here. If this one gets heavily edited or redacted, it's because the NFL hit me with another copyright claim. So I'm going to simultaneously post this over on my Patreon. The link will be in the description for that if you're interested in joining. It is $5 a month. If you think other Lions fans would enjoy this film study preview of the Lions' first home playoff game in decades, this one against a familiar face, Matt Stafford, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media so other Lions fans can enjoy this content too.